This is a hostile and restless sea, which mariners have learned to respect. But these cold waters are also bursting with life. The humble, the magical, even the monstrous are all found in this surprisingly exotic corner of the ocean. Many of these creatures are hunters, drawn here by a precious commodity, myriads of tiny, glittering silver fish. The waters of the North Sea are some of the richest in the world, and nowhere is life more abundant than around the Shetland Islands. This rugged chain of islands, surrounded by rich fishing grounds, lies at the gateway to the North Sea. The sea-washed skerries, lofty stacks and cliffs offer some of the most spectacular coastal scenery in Europe. "170 miles from mainland Scotland, this is the northern extremity of the British Isles. Having spent the winter scattered far and wide across the North Sea, guillemots return each spring to traditional breeding colonies on the islands. They quickly re-establish themselves and begin their noisy and often quarrelsome courtship. For the next 3 months, these birds must fish close to the islands if they're to provide enough food for their chicks. Success or failure depends on the availability of suitable fish within reach. The waters around Shetland are influenced by eddies in the Gulf Stream. A few degrees difference in temperature can have a profound effect on marine life, especially on ocean drifters, great and small, which move on the currents. Jellyfish are relatively large marine wanderers, but the nutrient-rich water also supports a vast array of minute animals. Where these microscopic planktonic creatures cloud the water, animals of monstrous proportions come to feed. basking shark can reach a length of 10 meters, filter the equivalent of a 50-meter swimming pool every hour, and hold half a ton of food in its stomach. This gigantic but completely harmless fish spends its days peacefully sifting the ocean. Its huge gaping mouth is designed to catch nothing larger than fish fry and minuscule plankton. As the water filters through its giant gill slits, the particles of food become trapped on a film of mucus and are then swallowed. Even though it's the largest fish in the North Atlantic, much of its life remains a mystery. Little is known of its movements or where it spends the winter. We do know that, like other sharks, it breeds very slowly. The Shetland population of basking sharks has never really recovered after an intensive fishery by the Norwegians 50 years ago. At twilight, plankton, which forms the basis of all marine life, concentrates at the surface. In amongst it are fish eggs containing tiny droplets of oil for buoyancy. A bewildering variety of tiny crustaceans, including the larvae of crabs, prawns, and lobsters. Little stinging hunters, strange-looking fish larvae. And sea gooseberries, which row up and down through the water with lines of beating filaments. In the early hours of the morning, miniature life forms return to deeper, safer waters. Shetland is on the same latitude as southern Greenland, so during the midsummer, these northern isles have no real night, only half light, which the islanders call simmer dim. At the top of the food chain come the hunters of fish. Grey seals prefer more exposed coasts and pursue their prey in offshore waters. In between fishing forays, they spend several days resting and digesting their last large meal. The kelp forest is their playground. Here they move with enviable ease and grace. They're inquisitive animals, and there are plenty of strange inhabitants hiding among the fronds to satisfy their curiosity. Out in deeper water, grey seals catch whatever fish are plentiful. In Shetland, it has been discovered that they feast on sand eels. These little fish, which are not related to true eels, occur in vast numbers. They feed on plankton and in turn are fed on by a great variety of other animals. The seabed may seem empty, but masters of camouflage wait for unsuspecting passers-by. While turbot lie in wait, cod take sand eels on the move. Without these silver shoals, there would be no cod for fish and chips. Another fish, commonly found on the fishmonger's slab, uses a lure to attract its victims. The angler or monkfish's tasseled dorsal spine is irresistible to hungry sand eels. The abundant silver shoals attract some exotic visitors to these waters. In the old days, Shetland's fishermen took their cue from pilot whales and seabirds in their quest for large catches. These days, sophisticated sonar equipment can pinpoint the exact location of every shoal of fish. Over 2 million tons of fish are caught in the North Sea every year. These fishermen are after cod, haddock, whiting and monkfish, and they all feed on sand eels. Within seconds of the nets being hauled aboard, the trawler has company. While the men sort and gut their catch, fulmars gather like vultures to devour the discarded offal. The fathers of these fishermen can remember when fulmars were a rarity. Now, nearly 250,000 pairs breed here. Gannets have reaped the benefits too. This is one of the birds that local trawlermen used to follow, knowing that they would lead them to rich fishing grounds. Now it's the other way round. The bird's spectacular plunge diving technique is wasted here. By the time the fish reach the surface, they're all dead or dying. Since the North Sea has been heavily exploited, the average size of fish caught in the nets has decreased. And because of restrictive fishery regulations, fish that are too small or have little commercial value are thrown overboard, rather than being processed for fish meal, even though they have no hope of survival. It seems a waste of precious resources from which only the seabirds benefit. For Shetland's gannets, it's not finding food but keeping it which can be a problem. Pirates patrol these waters. The great skewer, or bonksy as it is known locally, will get food by fair means or foul. A gannet with a gullet full of fish is an easy target. Bonksies have several ways of making their victim cough up the goods. Grabbing one wing tips it off balance and forces it to crash land in the water. Grasping its tail feathers makes the gannet nosedive towards the sea. The gannet is eventually compelled to jettison its load. Fish from the back of a trawler or a cropload of sand eels caught in the open sea, it's all the same to a bonksy. Sometimes the skewers gang together, but then have to share the booty. The gannets have little chance of escaping. These avian muggers have many tactics to fall back on, and if these fail, they're quick to learn new tricks. Shetland is a stronghold for the bonksy, which is rare in global terms. They first arrived in the 1700s, leapfrogging from Iceland to the Faroes, then to Fula, an outlying island of Shetland, and finally to here on Unst, the most northerly isle. In the early years, they suffered at the hands of egg collectors, and it was only after years of protection that their fortunes have changed. Today, they're common on Shetland, and the islands have over half the world's population of these skewers. A devoted parent brings in a load of stolen goods, second-hand fish. It's no coincidence that the two largest bonksy colonies are on the moorland above Shetland's main gannetries. Bonksies may be pirates, but they have little effect on the island's 17,000 pairs of gannets. Gannets too are newcomers, the first pairs bred here in the early 1900s. In the old days, the locals collected seabirds' eggs to supplement their diet, a harvest which held the colonies in check. Today, the gannetries are increasing, thanks to protection and fish supplied courtesy of the fishing fleet. Now it's hard for new pairs to find space to nest in the old colonies, so younger birds are prospecting for new gannetries. Off the southeast coast of mainland Shetland lies the island of Musa, dominated by its Pictish broch, or fort. Musa Sound is particularly rich in marine life. Harbour porpoises, unlike dolphins, are shy animals which seldom approach boats. 30 years ago they were common, but pollution, overfishing and accidental netting have taken their toll. Today, these sheltered waters have become increasingly important to their survival. This isn't a porpoise, although it could be mistaken for one. It's a male common seal, trying to attract the attention of a possible mate. She appears to have seen it all before. The male's courtship rituals are playful affairs which, as well as porpoising, involve a great deal of acrobatics. Common seals thrive in the sheltered waters of Musa Sound. They give birth in late May or June. The pups are real water babies and swim soon after they're born. For the next 6 weeks, mother and youngster are inseparable. The pup can even suckle underwater. Gradually, the pup learns to fend for itself. There's plenty of food here because a gentle current passes over the sandy seabed, perfect conditions for sand eels. This is probably why so many common seals live here and why porpoises visit in the summer. The hunters of the silver shoals come in many guises and employ various techniques for catching their slippery prey. With webbed feet like paddles at one end and a hook at the other, a shag has no difficulty catching sand eels half hidden in the sand. It scans the seabed looking for the slightest movement or glimmer of silver. When the sand eels emerge to feed in mid-water, the shag panics the shoals and picks off any stragglers. It's not just diving birds that hunt underwater. Shetland is famous for otters, which around here do most of their fishing in the sea. This female has 3 well-grown cubs, evidence of a good life. The family regularly scent marks its territory with spraint to inform others of their kind that the area is occupied. Fishing in the sea every day does present these otters with a problem. To keep out the cold, they use air trapped in their fur for insulation. Salt causes their coats to become matted and waterlogged, so to keep their fur in good condition, they have to wash regularly in fresh water. They seldom dive more than 10 to 15 feet, but there's plenty of food hidden in the kelp. Their diet consists mainly of fish, which around these islands include sand eels, but they're also particularly fond of crabs. Over 700 of these beautiful but rare mammals live here. Shetland is thought to have the densest population in Europe, but not all the island's wildlife has been so successful in recent years. This is the Tammy Nori, the local name for the puffin. Its clownish looks mask a recent tragedy. Shetland's puffins have suffered a serious decline. Many of their nesting burrows are now empty. They need small, oily and nutritious fish to feed to their young. Around Shetland, they rely on sand eels. There are no local substitutes. Without the silver shoals, puffin chicks starve. There's one fisherman the birds cannot compete with. Shetlanders started fishing for sand eels in 1976. They were caught to make fish meal for animal food. By 1982, they were catching 52,000 tons a year. Several trawlers were so heavily laden that they sank on the way back to the fish processing plant. The favored fishing grounds were inshore and close to the seabird colonies. Most of the sand eels within reach were being snatched from under them. By 1988, the catch had fallen to just under 5,000 tons, and the effect on much of Shetland's wildlife was catastrophic. One of the species most seriously affected was the graceful Arctic tern. These birds fly in from the Antarctic, one of the longest migrations in the world, to nest on Shetland's shingle and rocky beaches. Unable to find food, they failed to breed for 7 years. How much of this was due to the sand eel catch or natural fluctuations in fish populations is hard to tell. Intensive fishing almost certainly made a bad situation worse. The males need large sand eels at the start of the season to impress their mates. Terns cannot dive deeper than 30 centimeters, so can only grab fish close to the surface. Newly hatched chicks need the smallest sand eels, ones spawned the previous winter. During the 80s, the situation was so desperate that the terns were seen picking at rabbit corpses. Today, things are looking up. Another bird which failed to raise chicks during the sand eel calamity was the kittiwake. When sand eel fishing was banned and stocks allowed to recover, the bird started to breed again. Unfortunately, the kittiwake is suffering from some unexpected long-term effects. When there were no sand eels to catch for themselves or steal from other birds, the bonxies had to find an alternative source of food, and that included scavenging around other seabird colonies. The kittiwake plasters its cup-shaped nest on precarious ledges low down on the cliffs. Here it's safe from almost all predators, except for those that can launch an aerial attack. As they scoured the bird colonies in search of any edible debris or carrion, bonxies soon learned to take unguarded eggs. They didn't stop at egg stealing either. A few of the marauding birds developed a preference for meat rather than fish, grabbing adults off their nests. Throughout the colony, the surviving kittiwake partners cause chaos as they try to muscle in on other pairs. Kittiwakes often mate for life, and it's practically impossible for intruders to break up established relationships. Normally, one parent stands guard at the nest, but when sand eels are scarce, both adults have to spend more time away finding food. This leaves the chicks vulnerable. The kittiwake's clamoring calls are enough to deter most predators, but the bonxies ignore the commotion. Even mobbing the enemy has little effect. The bonxies just turned the situation to their advantage, learning to snatch adults on the wing. By the end of the breeding season, a few rogue bonxies can practically wipe out a kittiwake colony. Cliffs, which once echoed to the cries of kittiwakes, are now lulled by the crashes of the waves. But for the survivors, autumn will bring unexpected plenty. The weather in Shetland can be wild and unpredictable. Its sudden changes of mood sometimes even threaten the hunters of the silver shoals. Grey seals breed in autumn on remote, inaccessible beaches. Mothers recognize their pups by scent as well as sound. Bulls are darker than the cows, as well as heavier, with a more pronounced Roman nose. The cows come into season almost as soon as their pups are weaned and mate with dominant bulls. These mature bulls never know how long they will reign supreme on the beach, which can make them overzealous in their attempts to mate. Shetlanders once hunted seals for their meat, oil and skins. Now the weather can be their greatest enemy. When the autumn gales coincide with high tides, all the pups on the breeding beach can be swept out to sea or dashed against the rocks. Disasters like this keep Shetland seal populations stable. Generally, though, the pups have been weaned and gone to sea before the worst of the weather hits the islands. Gales often whip up the waves into a fury, causing serious problems to seafarers. As a result, the islands have their share of shipwrecks, the most notorious recent victim being the Barrett. The ruptured tanker foundered on the southern rocks, disgorging 85,000 tons of light crude oil into the sea. Countless marine animals, including seabirds and seals, perished. The damage to salmon farming and the fishing industry ran into millions. Although everyone agreed things could have been worse, as long as oil flows in pipes under the sea or is carried in tankers, disaster could strike at any time. Today there are no obvious signs of pollution. Kelp is slowly colonizing the rusting, twisted plates. Although superficial wounds heal quickly, we will probably never know the real extent of the damage. Catastrophes like the Barrett make the headlines, but just as much damage is caused from daily small-scale spillage. A far greater threat still may come from the fishing industry. Nets, which once bulged to bursting point, are now sometimes nearly empty. Too many fishermen are chasing too few fish. Many people are now seriously concerned that the North Sea, one of our greatest assets, is being fished out. It's a practice which in time may come to haunt us. Guillemots that have starved to death are blown ashore on a cold east wind. During the winter, bad weather compounds the problems for the seabirds. Storms drive the remaining fish to deeper water, making them harder for diving birds to find. Only skuas, yet to fly south, stand to gain from the situation. After the breeding season, guillemots take to the open oceans and range right across the North Sea. As autumn turns to winter, sand eels burrow out of sight into the sand, and the birds must look out for different fish. No longer tied to their breeding colonies, they can pursue migrating shoals of sprats and small herring. In open water, these little fish have nowhere to hide. When they're attacked by fast-moving predators, they bunch up, each trying to seek safety in the center of the shoal. In the wake of the silverfish come giant predators. Shetlanders call minke whales herring hogs. Whole shoals could disappear in one gulp. Balls of fish forced up to the surface are at the mercy of kittiwakes patrolling the open sea. The winter shoals of herring, sprat and mackerel attract other ocean wanderers, long-finned pilot whales. The Shetlanders used to hunt them for their oil, driving them ashore like the Faroese do today. They seem to be less frequent visitors now, probably because their prey, squid and fish, have altered course in response to changes in ocean currents. Dwarfing the pilot whales, a 60-foot fin whale breaks the surface with scarcely a ripple. In the North Atlantic, they feed mainly on small shoaling fish, rather than their more usual diet of krill. Their annual migration route takes them along the edge of the continental shelf and close to the islands. In recent years, there have been more sightings of humpbacked whales in British waters. On several occasions, Shetlanders out for an evening's fishing have been surprised by these boisterous giants close to their boats. At the turn of the century, there were enough whales passing close to the islands to support shore-based whaling stations. They closed when there were no longer enough whales to hunt. Thanks to worldwide protection, whales are now showing signs of recovery, but it's unlikely that they will ever reach their former numbers. Whales reflect the health of the seas. Few people care about cold, wet fish, but without them, these giants would have no future. In this century, the whole wildlife scene in Shetland has changed almost beyond recognition. There have been winners and losers. Recently, the Shetlanders have voted to impose strict local sand eel quotas. It shows that they at least value and respect the waters around them. It's a small step in the right direction, but it's hope for all sea life around Shetland.